I finished one of my uni classes pretty late, and I was walking home to my apartment around 9 p.m. Once I arrived in the lobby, I noticed a man following me from behind. I thought nothing of it. I pressed the elevator button, and suddenly he turned to me and said, Do you know Lily? This man looked like he was in his late 30s or early 40s, with a scraggly beard and tattered clothes. He looked deranged, his eyes were blank, and he spoke with a stutter. I don't know Lily, I replied. It was just us in the lobby. I'm meeting Lily. She lives here. What floor does she live on? I tried to be polite. Sorry, I don't know a Lily who lives here. The elevator opened and both of us went in. I pressed my floor level, but he just stood there. What floor are you going to? I asked. I want to see Lily. You need to pick a floor, I told him sternly. The elevator door opened and I said a nice goodbye to him, but he followed me out into my floor level. What are you doing? He looked confused. I just want your number. If I ran into my apartment, he would know which unit I lived in. If I screamed, I would risk him trying to physically quiet me. I weighed no more than 110 pounds. He was not only taller, but looked much stronger than me. I pressed the elevator down button and waited for the next one to come take him down. My name is Maurice. My name is Maurice. My name is Maurice. Maurice, he said. It gives me shivers just thinking about the way he spoke. How old are you? I asked him, still trying to be kind so he wouldn't harm me. He looked insane. He had a twitch and his unruly hair looked like it hadn't been brushed in months. I'm in my mid-30s. Well, I'm 19, so... That's okay. At least you're above 18. He grinned. I have a boyfriend, which I actually did at the time. I'll give you my number so you can keep it in your diary during a rainy day, when you have fights with him. That's not a good idea, I nervously laughed. My patience was wearing thin. The elevator door opened and I told him to get in. I don't know how to go down, he said. He didn't even move. Press the L button, I said. You need a card to go to the lobby. No, you don't. But the elevator door had already closed. We were both in the exact same position as when we started. I was sweating bullets. I had to be nice. I was weak, tired, and possibly in danger. My apartment floor didn't have a lot of people, so it was eerily quiet. I pressed the elevator down button again. You need to leave, I told him, trying to sound stern but kind. He started talking to himself and looked like he was about to explode. I stepped back. The emergency staircase was around the corner, but if I ran down there, he might chase me, and I'd be stuck in the staircase. He continued talking to himself, and I repeatedly pressed the button down. Finally, the elevator door opened, and there was a group of people inside the elevator, waiting for someone to get in. Go down now, I said. Right now. You can't stay here. He hesitated. I wanted to push him inside, but all I did was point to the open elevator. You need a card to go to... No, you don't. I had it with this guy. He apologized and slowly went inside the elevator. I ran back to my room, my heart beating too fast I had to catch my breath. It was my last encounter with this guy, and thankfully, I never saw him around my apartment again. I was about 13 years old when this incident occurred, so it was 8 years ago, I think. Me and my family were on vacation in Orlando, and we were staying at the Nickelodeon Hotel. A very cool place, nice water parks, and nice rooms. I was with my family, my mom, dad, brother, 2 sisters, and myself. I'm the oldest. We were at Universal Studios for the day and got back rather late. On the way to our room, my parents were carrying all of the merchandise we bought, which was a lot because they had 4 kids. So they kind of fell behind, and me and my 2 sisters, around the ages of 8 and 6, all got ahead of them together. My parents and brother, about age 10, were behind us. The elevator was just around the corner. Me and my sisters got to it first. The elevator opened just as we were walking around the corner. As we were walking around the corner, a man stepped off the elevator. I barely got a look at him because as soon as he saw me and my sisters, he immediately got back on without missing a beat. I should have known that that was a bad sign, but unfortunately I was a little slow back then, so it never occurred to me that this guy was trouble. Plus my parents were not there to see the man, so they never stopped us from getting onto the elevator. My sisters were rushing to get on the elevator because they were at the "I want to press that button" age. We all get on to see the man standing with his head facing the ground and both hands behind his back in the back of the elevator. He was very creepy looking. He had brown hair that reached the middle of his neck and looked like he hadn't showered in weeks. He looked like he was in his late 40s or early 50s because he had many wrinkles on his face and a creepy grin. He was wearing black jeans, a red, black, and white flannel, and a black turtleneck underneath. Keep in mind, we are in Florida, and this was a hot night, so it was weird to see that he was wearing all these layers. My youngest sister goes to press the 4th floor button, but all the buttons were lit up already. I wish I could say that that was what made me realize we were in trouble, but it didn't click just yet that this guy pressed all of the buttons. I held the door open for my parents and brother, and my mom looked at the guy. I will never forget the face she made. She had a huge smile on her face looking at my brother, and she looked at that man, and that smile instantly dropped. I saw that look of terror in my mom's face. My dad even gave a strange look at the guy like he knew to watch out for him. That was the moment when I realized that this man was up to no good. The elevator doors closed. My parents stood on each side of the man. Each were staring at him, just waiting to jump into action in case he made a move. My brother asked out loud, "Why did you guys press all the buttons?" And the older one of my two sisters, still completely oblivious to what was happening, blurted out, "That guy did," and pointed right at the man. My mom let out a nervous giggle. The elevator was slow, but finally got to the 2nd floor. The man quickly got out of the elevator and went down the hallway. As soon as he left, my mom quickly closed the doors and we continued up. We stopped at the 3rd floor, closed the doors, then got to our floor on the 4th floor. My parents made sure we stayed with them this time. We got to our room, and this is when my parents started to freak out. My dad called the front desk to warn them about what had happened so they could check it out. That was the last we ever saw of that man. We don't know if the people at the hotel found him, but all I can say is that I'm glad that my parents recognized the danger. God only knows what he had planned to do to one or all of us if my parents weren't there. When I was 16 years old, it was a very low point in my life, and I ended up getting hospitalized for 4 months over the summer. The doctors were afraid that my heart would give out if I even did so much as walk, so if I wanted to go anywhere, I had to call a nurse to take me in a wheelchair. My mom and dad visited me every day, not always together. Whenever my mom came alone, she would take me out in a wheelchair to the beach access behind the hospital so I could get some fresh air and look at the lake. One day, my mom had come by to visit, and she took me out to the beach as usual. We were waiting for the elevator down from the ward, and a man stopped my mom and me.
"Your daughter has such beautiful black hair."
The way he said it gave me the willies, kind of in a Buffalo Bill-esque "I want to wear it" way. My mom thanked him and chatted a bit, but I just looked the other way and ignored him. I could feel his eyes on me, though. We all pile into the elevator, and as soon as the doors close, I feel something tugging at my hair. I glance over and realize that the guy is playing with my hair. Now, I'm pretty creeped out here, but I don't want to cause a scene just in case he has a mental disorder and can't help himself, so I just leaned over as far as I could in the wheelchair so that he couldn't reach me without alerting my mom. Anyway, we reach the bottom, get off, and my mom and I start wheeling over to the beach while the guy just stands by the elevator and watches us go. I told my mom what he did, and she said she'd make sure to do something if we ever saw him again. After that, we kept seeing him, always by the elevator. He'd make a comment about how beautiful my hair is. My mom would nod politely. We'd go in the elevator and he'd try to play with my hair, but my mom would move in the way. We'd get off and he'd watch us roll out. Creepy, but we decided he was harmless. Until about a month later, we went down to the beach as usual, and this time we didn't see him at the elevator, but we didn't think much of it. At some point my mom had to use the restroom, and it was mutually decided I was old enough to take care of myself for 3 minutes. I was sitting in the wheelchair looking out at the lake and enjoying the sun when I started getting pushed. Thinking it was from my mom, I turned around to ask for 5 more minutes. Nope, Not my mom. Nope. It's the guy. He's pushing me towards the bushes, and the look on his face is predatory. I scream, but the only other people out there are in a canoe out in the water. So I make a decision. I decide if I'm going to die, I'd rather it be heart failure than this dude. So I get up out of the wheelchair and start legging it towards the restrooms. I look behind me to see if he's following, and fortunately he's not. He's just standing by the wheelchair looking shocked. I guess he thought I was paralyzed. I make it back to my mother, who'd run out of the toilet upon hearing me screaming. We both look back, and the guy is running away like he's got a rocket coming out of his butt. My mom carried me on her back to the wheelchair. Then we rushed to inform the hospital staff. They put a watch out, and for the next month there's security hanging around the elevator on my floor. But thankfully, he never came back. My first year of college was a real challenge for me. I'm extremely introverted, and while I do have friends I spend time with, I don't make friends very easily. I'm simply too shy to approach others, and I'm no good at connecting with strangers. It's just who I am, and I'm okay with that. When I started classes that fall, I was the invisible girl. Never called attention to myself if I could help it. You know the type, I'm sure. There are a lot of people who specialize in invisibility. So I didn't have a lot of friends that semester, just people I would call acquaintances. We got along fine, but couldn't really be called friends. Now, this time I was battling my own demons too. When I was 16, I was brutally abused, and by no means was I over it. It was a major factor in my life. I went to therapy regularly and was treated for major depression, extreme anxiety disorder, and PTSD. I was walking a thin line trying to pull myself together and get on with life, while at the same time feeling very isolated and therefore vulnerable around others. I avoided men whenever I could simply because I wasn't ready to let my guard down, and it was exhausting being on constant high alert. I was also rather paranoid. It's impossible to avoid potentially dangerous, to my paranoid mind, situations when living on campus and being the loner that I was. There were times when I simply had to walk back down to my dorm in the dark or participate in a group project with men, etc. I worked hard on my self-confidence, and while I eventually overcame my fears, at that time I was always on edge. I'm sure you can understand. One day I went to class in the humanities building. Not a big deal, but the classroom was on the top floor of a tall building, and I usually rode the elevator. That elevator was slow, but still better than walking up 12 flights of stairs. I get to the building, call the elevator, and wait. To my surprise, when the doors opened, I was the only one who got in. This was a relief because of my paranoia. Then it happened. The doors were closing when someone stuck a hand in the middle and 4 guys got in. This wasn't good. My anxiety hit the roof, and I backed myself into a corner so I felt somewhat safer. I kept telling myself I was perfectly safe, that these men weren't going to hurt me, and I should relax. Then one of them turned to me, grinned maliciously, and said, "Hey, there's only one girl in here. Let's get her." Then all chaos broke loose in my mind. I'm sure now it was a joke, albeit a very disgusting one, but at the time I didn't take it that way, at all. When he made that comment, I panicked. I had my book bag, bursting with heavy books, on the ground in front of me. In my terror, I picked it up and started swinging. When the doors finally opened, there were 4 very surprised men either on the ground or huddling away from me while I stood in the middle, hyperventilating and still swinging. I have never seen anyone exit an elevator that fast, and I'm not talking about me. Those guys actually stumbled over each other trying to get away from me. It took me a long time to calm down, but in the end it was a huge step in rebuilding my confidence. I'd been in a potentially dangerous position with 4 men, and I defended myself quite effectively. That was the beginning of reclaiming myself. So basically my entire family was throwing a reunion/New Year's Eve party at this huge hotel, and all of the adults decided to go down to the bar to drink, thinking all of us kids were asleep. Obviously, we weren't. There was enough candy and soda there to keep us up for 72 hours, and we decided to go run out in the hallway to play a game of hide and seek. Yeah, real smart idea. Anyway, there were 6 children, and we split into 2 groups of 3. each group hiding together so no one would wander off and get us all in trouble. When it was my group's turn to hide, we somehow all managed to get lost at different corners of the hotel, and being the child that I was, the thought of being lost was already frightening enough to me. After circling the floor of our room about 5 times, I decided it would be the logical thing to just go down to the bar where my parents were. Big mistake. I walked to the elevator, and when the doors opened, there was already a man in there. I didn't think much of it, as this was a big hotel. It's no surprise that someone else has to take the elevator to the main floor as well. He asked if I needed to go down to the first floor too, and I said yes. The man was very tall and reeked of beer, and he had on a dirty trench coat and sunglasses. I tried to maintain as little eye contact with him as possible, until he asked me a rather odd question. He asked, "You're looking for your friends, right?" I stood speechless, wondering how he knew what I was doing before. He stated, "You're the one who was playing hide and seek, aren't you?" I mumbled a scared, yeah, finding it weird that he seemed to have been watching us play this game the whole time. We both remained quiet until the doors had opened to the 3rd floor, not the main one. I just thought the man hit the wrong button or something, so I reached to hit the first button. When he reached for my arm and tried to drag me out of the elevator, I froze up as he said, "Come on, I know where your friends are," gesturing to the dead end of the hallway where all the vending machines were. He walked closer to me, grabbing my arm and again attempting to drag me to the isolated section of the hall. I managed to twist away and bolted to the stairs, practically screeching the whole time. I managed to reach the main floor only to run into my entire family, including the relatives I was playing hide and seek with, whom were looking for me the whole time I was with this man. Needless to say, I still get a little wary when I'm alone with a stranger in an elevator. This takes place a few years back when I was in university, so basically young and dumb. There was a class gathering at a restaurant for a small Christmas party, and my friend Karen and I decided to meet up beforehand. We agreed to take the train and meet at a certain stop instead of driving to save us the hassle. I stepped into a nearly empty train cart and sat down immediately, pulling out my iPod and turned up the music. It was cold and early in the afternoon, so the only people on there, excluding myself, was an elderly couple and a bundled-up man sitting across from me. I dismissed him and turned to my music until I felt an uneasy feeling. I looked up and saw him smiling a friendly smile. I nodded at him but ignored him. I held my purse tighter and slowly started to put away my iPod so I could make a break for it when my stop came. As soon as the train stopped, I stepped off and I started to speed walk towards the elevator to go above ground. In hindsight, I should have took the stairs, but in my haste to go, I took the elevator. As I feared, the guy slipped in, and he was a big man that looked even bigger whenever he wasn't all bundled up, and I was a young, petite girl, so I was even more terrified. He smiled down at me and said, "You have the most beautiful shoes ever." I was so shocked I couldn't do anything but stare down and notice I was wearing my favorite black stiletto heels. At this point, I had forgotten I was even wearing heels. I muttered a quiet thank you and inched away from him in the confined space. He sighed and said, "Oh, you must have beautiful feet. I would do anything to have them." I was freaking out on the inside, and I pressed myself up against the wall the best I could. He continued, "Do you want to come to my place? I'm sure I have more beautiful shoes for your beautiful feet. I promise I'll do anything for you." At this point, I was so scared I didn't know what to do except stick my hand in my bag and grope around for the mace my boyfriend bought me, hoping I wouldn't have to use it. The man began to smile and then said, "I'm sure I have a pair of red heels that will make your black hair stand out even more." I muttered a no thank you and was relieved when the elevator door opened. But in order to get past the door, I had to squeeze past the man who was positioned half in front of the door. He grinned and leaned in for a hug, which I quickly dodged, fearing for my life. I'll never forget his angry, chilling eyes when I turned back to see if he was following. He remained by the elevator, smiling sinisterly and waving and muttering more to himself about beautiful red shoes. Thankfully for me, my friend Karen showed up, and at the sight of her, he fled down a flight of stairs. I was, and still am, terrified of getting in an elevator after that experience. My girlfriend and I decided to make a Walmart run. She was having terrible cramps and demanded that I take her to get some ibuprofen. You never say no to a woman that is on her period. It was already late and we got back at around 2 a.m., left at 1 a.m. We live on campus as we're both college sophomores. I was parking in a parking garage that is about a 5-minute walk away from our dorm, not very far at all. I parked on the 3rd floor, but the exit was on the 6th floor, so we decided to take the elevator. It was a Thursday morning, so everyone was in bed or out drinking, Thirsty Thursday, so the campus was unusually silent. As the elevator doors opened, there was a man standing there. I was taken aback because he was hulking, about 6'5", 280 pounds, muscular, and had that stereotypical look of, "I'm going to murder you." I didn't move, but again, my girlfriend could have taken down an entire army of Nazi troops with the way she was feeling. She got on right beside him, and I followed. We rode up to the 6th floor, and the guy began to make small talk. He asked about our majors, where we lived, how we liked school. He was pretty decent. All the while I forgot to press the button of where we were supposed to get off, so instead we just rode the elevator up to the 9th floor, which was in the parking garage office sector. There were nothing but offices up there. My girlfriend and I awkwardly laughed about it. When we got to the 9th floor, we expected the man to leave, but he just stood there, waited for the doors to close, and said he'd follow us down and make sure we got out okay. I suddenly got creeped out, and I could tell my girlfriend was too because she tucked herself behind me. I'm only 6'1", 170-ish pounds, with arm strength of SpongeBob SquarePants. But instead of hitting the 6 button, he randomly hits the 3, and in my state of shock, I just blankly stare at him. My girlfriend realized what he did and immediately tried to hit the 6. We had already passed the floor, so she reached out again, but the man grabbed her hand. His face had suddenly changed. He no longer smiled pleasantly or grinned courteously. The look of malice on his face will, until this day, haunt me. I intervened and pulled my girlfriend back. The elevator arrived on floor 3, and we both, girlfriend and I, bolted out of there. Luckily, we were on the same floor as my car. The man from the elevator gave chase for a few feet, but once we were in my car, he went off around a corner. We drove to the campus security station, which was about a minute drive from the garage, and told them about what had happened. It wasn't an hour later that they had caught the guy and arrested him. He was out on probation, but also had drugs in his system and was pretty messed up in general. I grew up in an apartment complex with about 20 buildings, each around 25 floors high. Each floor had 4 apartments, which made about 2,000 apartments in all. Each building had a car park underneath it with an elevator and a flight of stairs that went from the car park to the roof. My apartment was on the 5th floor of an apartment building right in the middle of the complex. I used to take the bus home from school, and it would drop me off at the corner across from the complex. I'd cross the road and walk home. One day I had gotten off the bus and crossed the road when I saw that some neighborhood kids had drawn a hopscotch on the footpath outside the complex. I loved hopscotch, so I dropped my bag and started playing. On my second go, a lady, she looked like she was in her mid-20s, came over and asked if she could play. I was a naturally shy little girl, but I was also very polite, especially to adults. I gave her my stone and let her have a go. Once she had a go, she asked if her friends could play. 3 guys, all in their mid to late 20s, came over. This freaked me out. As I said, I was very shy, especially of males. I was aware that I was alone with them, and I felt very uncomfortable. I told the lady that they could play, but I had to go home. She gave me a sad look and said that she hoped that we could be good friends. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I was pretty scared, so I lied and told her I would take my school bag home and come right back. I picked up my bag and hightailed it out of there. I got home and thought that would be the end of it. I was scared of getting in trouble for my parents for talking to strangers, so I didn't tell them. The next day, the lady was waiting for me at the gates to the complex. She said that she was very sad that I hadn't come back and it had hurt her feelings. I said I was sorry, but that my mom had made me do my homework. She asked if we could play now. I looked around and saw her friends waiting by a van. She said that they wanted to take me to have ice cream at Kiki's. Kiki's was a new ice cream place that had just opened. Each ice cream came with a toy, and all my friends at school had at least 2 toys each. We couldn't afford to go there, so I'd always felt left out. Now this lady was offering to take me, and I was excited. I knew I shouldn't go with her, so I said thank you, but I couldn't play today. She got really angry and said that I had to go with her. Being a timid kid, I hated being yelled at, so this freaked me right out and I started to cry. The lady immediately said she was sorry and gave me a hug. Then she tried to lead me to the van, saying an ice cream would make it all better. I pulled away and started to run home. This time, they followed me. I could hear them running after me, and I knew that they were faster than me, so I figured I'd hide from them. I flew into the underground car park of the building closest to the gate and hid between 2 cars. I heard them run down the ramp and stop. Then I heard the lady call out to me, "Do you like hide and seek? Let's play. Ready? We're coming to get you." I was shivering violently and knew that they'd find me here. I decided I'd go to the elevator shaft, take the elevator to the top, then run down the stairs a few floors and take it back down, thinking that they'd see the elevator stop on the top floor and assume I was hiding there, so they'd search there while I got away. The elevator was on the other side of the car park. I had to go around 2 corners to get there. I crept along the wall, staying as low as I could until I was around the corner. Then I bolted for the elevator. The elevator was in a small room that had a huge door. I got inside, but didn't close the door all the way. I pressed the up button and watched as the elevator slowly descended, stopping at nearly every floor. I crept over to the door and peeked out through the crack to see where they were. I spotted them just as I heard the elevator bing from behind me. Without thinking, I closed the door. Now, as I said before, the door was huge, so it made a huge noise as it closed, and even as I ran into the elevator, I knew they'd know where I was. The elevator was full of people, and I squeezed right to the back, hiding between 2 boys and a girl who I'd seen around before. The girl living in my building, but on a different floor. I watched the elevator doors closing, praying that they would hurry up. Just before they closed, a hand shot between them, and they opened again. The woman was there, looking furious. "Get out here!" she yelled. An elderly woman asked what the matter was, and the woman said I was her daughter and I'd run away. I was too scared to speak as the woman grabbed my arm and tried to drag me out. One of the boys sensed something was wrong and stopped her. He asked if I knew her, and I shook my head and started to cry. The girl from my building picked me up while the boy told the woman to leave me alone. Since the elevator was full of people who now realized what was happening, the woman and the guys disappeared. The girl from my building and the 2 guys walked me home and told my parents what had happened. The police were called, and after some investigating, I wasn't told this until years later, found that the woman and the men were child traffickers. I'm so grateful that the boy realized something was off and stepped in. Who knows where I'd be if he hadn't? When I was about 16, I went on a trip to Cabo San Lucas with my family and my best friend. My friend and I had a hotel room to ourselves for the trip, something I was naturally excited about. One afternoon, I was getting on the elevator and a security guard got on with me. As the elevator rose, he looked at me and said, "Excuse me, were you wearing a green skirt on the beach the other day?" Yes, why?" I replied. I was already reflexively creeped out at the mention of a miniskirt I had worn a few days prior. "Oh, nothing. I really liked it a lot." When I got out of the elevator, he got off on the same floor and was walking past as I took out my key card to unlock the door to my room. At 4 a.m. that morning, I woke up with a startle, only to register that there was a man standing silently at the foot of my bed. A man in a security guard uniform, the one from the elevator. As he saw me wake up, he stammered something about my door not being locked properly and ran out of the room. I was still groggy with sleep and didn't fully register what had just happened. A moment after he ran out, I became aware that I was lying on my back with the covers around my ankles. I sleep nude, but never kick my covers off in my sleep, as I'm always cold and the AC was on full blast as well. I'm also a very deep sleeper, so someone standing at my bed alone would never stir me. I'm pretty sure him pulling the covers back, causing me to get cold, is what woke me. I'm scared to think what would have happened had my friend not been fast asleep next to me in the next bed. Unfortunately, as I was creeped out in the elevator and had avoided making eye contact or looking at his face, and as it was so dark I couldn't have identified him in the room, I never bothered to report it to the hotel. I still regret that years later. I never liked going alone on elevators. Ever since I was a child, they make me anxious. I live on an 8th floor, so most of the time I have to take it. Through the elevator doors, while there's still daylight, you can see the floors you are passing. So during the day, I at least can see where I'm at, and that makes me feel a little less overwhelmed. At night, well, I'd rather take the stairs. It was really late when I got home, maybe at around 2 a.m., so I began going up the stairs. Everything was running smoothly up until the 4th floor. I heard someone moaning in a faint, slow, and creepy voice. I freaked out and started climbing the stairs as fast as I could. I couldn't really tell where the moanings were coming from, but whoever did it increased the volume of those terrifying moans as I came closer to my floor. When I was finally there, the moans abruptly stopped. Just so you know, the elevator is facing the entrance of the stairs where I was at, and I knew it was there because I could see the light coming from the gap between its doors. And here's what, to this day, still scares me to the bone. The lights on the elevator started to flicker, and not because they were damaged. Oh no, there was someone pacing from one side to another inside the elevator. I ran as fast as I could up to my apartment, and when I was finally inside, terrified, I heard the elevator door open and froze. I heard him or her moan again, and then cackle loudly, as if he or she was mocking me. Shortly after, I also heard steps as if the person was walking down the stairs. I think my unreasonable fear towards elevators might have saved me from who knows what yesterday. And no, I still won't be taking the elevator at night. It was very stormy. I was on my way to a convention in Chicago with 2 of my good friends. We went every year, and this was the 4th time. The Weather Channel called for severe weather, but we refused to miss our annual overnight trip. We all piled in my car for a 6-hour drive. The first few hours was fine, just raining and humid. Then the typical Midwest severe thunderstorm started, the kind where you just look down at the lines on the road so you don't end up in the ditch since you can't see anything else. Once when the lightning flashed, my friend Chris swore he saw a tornado in the cornfield in the distance. We finally gave up and pulled under a bridge until the rain let up enough for us to see. We waited a good 45 minutes and were running hours late from driving so slow through the storm. The rest of the trip was drizzle and that post-thunderstorm fog that always felt creepy to me. There were hardly any other cars on the interstate since most people were too smart to be out driving, which just added to the creepy feeling. We didn't get to our motel until about 2 a.m. Since we were poor college kids, we never stayed at the convention hotel. Luckily, we had found a little motel about a 20-minute drive away that was dirt cheap. We stayed at this motel every time we came to the convention. It was 3 stories tall and with no interior hallways. All the rooms were accessed from outside. Unfortunately, the cheapest rooms were on the 3rd floor and the elevator had not worked any of the times we visited. Checking into the motel in the middle of the night was interesting. It was still foggy and drizzling out, but almost humid and hot. There were only 2 or 3 other cars in the dark parking lot, and the only lights were from the lobby and the street lights. We walked inside, and no one was at the desk. After ringing the bell for about 15 minutes with no response, we actually called the hotel from my friend's cell phone. An older man answered and soon came out to the desk from a back room. We tried to negotiate a 1st floor room since obviously they were not busy. He was a jerk though, and kept saying they're booked. There were 2 to 3 other cars there. Certainly some room on a 1st floor had to be available. Being exhausted, We took our third-floor room and prepared ourselves to drag our suitcases up 3 flights of outside stairs in the drizzle and heat. As we left the lobby, the old man called out to us, "You kids lock your door and don't answer it after dark." He went back into the back room and slammed the door. God, that creeped me out. We unloaded the car in the foggy, dark parking lot and dragged our luggage to the stairs. As we came around the back of the building, we all saw the elevator. The out-of-order sign was gone and the doors were open. The light in the elevator was the only light source on the entire back of the building. It seemed like something good finally happened to us on the trip. The elevator was working and we didn't have to lug all of our things up those slippery stairs. I remember thinking it was weird that the doors were open. Didn't the elevator doors usually stay closed until you push the button? But whatever, it was better than stairs. We loaded in our luggage and got in. I pushed the button for the 3rd floor and the doors started to close. The doors were standard elevator doors, and right before they closed all the way, words appeared, written in red paint or marker on the far side of the elevator door, so that it was only visible when the door closed. It said, "Well, you screwed up now. Sorry." The elevator started moving. We all stared at the door. My friend Chris from behind said the obvious thing we were all thinking. "Guys, I think we're screwed." It took that elevator forever to get to the 3rd floor. With a ding, the doors slowly opened. None of us moved. I think we were all waiting for something to come out of the fog or one of those sirens from Silent Hill to start. Nothing happened. The door started to close and my friend Amy quickly shoved her suitcase in the way of the door. We all scrambled out. The elevator door closed and we heard it go down to the ground level again, abandoning us to our fate. Slowly, we all 3 came around to the side of the building. Nothing was there but a long walkway open to the elements with doors along the left side. Completely terrified now, we crept towards our room, which was halfway down the walkway. We were almost there when we heard it, loud and clear in the night. Ding. It was that elevator returning to the 3rd floor. We sprinted to the room. Chris had the key and frantically tried to get our door open as the other 2 of us stared towards the back of the building to see who would come around the corner. Click. The door was open and we bolted into the room. We locked every lock on that door and braced our suitcases up against it for good measure. We stood inside listening for anything else. We heard nothing. Being the only guy in the group, Chris looked outside after a few minutes, but he couldn't see anything. I don't think any of us slept well that night, and we never stayed in that motel, ever again. I was 23 at the time of this story. Sometimes when I go a long time without talking to anyone, my voice comes out quite weird when I finally do talk. Most of the time I remember to clear my throat or something, but sometimes I'll just start talking, and it'll sound weird. So one such occasion, I was riding the metro home to College Park, Maryland. I worked in D.C. at the time, and my ride home was usually around an hour. On the train, there was a cute girl. I try not to constantly look at girls on the train because I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. It seemed, though, like every time I did glance at this girl, she looked right back at me immediately afterward. I was hoping that she kept looking at me because she thought I was cute or something too, but was worried that due to coincidence that every time she checked to see if I was looking at her, I was, and that it seemed like I was just constantly staring at her. I finally got to my stop around 11 p.m. I was the only person that got off of the train at this stop except for the cute girl. At the College Park metro station, there is a large parking garage where I had parked my car. I had gone to work late in that day, so my car was parked on the 4th floor. I got onto the elevator and noticed the cute girl was already in it with me. She pressed the number 2. I thought to myself that she must be extremely lazy or tired to take the elevator 1 floor. As if she read my mind, she answered saying, "I'm not that lazy. It's just that the stairs can be pretty scary at night." Now this is where my inactive throat thing comes in, and trust me when I say I have absolutely no idea why I said this. I turned to her and said in a very gargly low voice, "The elevator can be a pretty scary place too sometimes." And then kind of got a tickle in my throat and started clearing it, but it could have sounded like grunting. At that moment, the elevator got to her floor, and she just booked it. So cute girl, if you're out there, I'm sorry. Hey guys, Let's Read here. If you're a fan of the page and wish to support it further, consider heading over to Patreon, where for only $1 a month, you'll have early access to all audio released on the channel a day early. New tiers have been added as well, such as social media follows and personal communication there. I'll create a personal voicemail greeting just for you, a custom short story of your choice narrated and specifically sent directly to you, or work hand in hand with me as a member of the team as we collaborate on a future video of your choice. Also, stay tuned for live streams more frequently in the future where I chat with you guys and narrate stories live. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon.